I think that's all good. Let's give it a clap. Does the gear you film with really matter? Well, kind of, but not quite as much as you think and not in the ways you might think. So I'm going to show you guys the first commercial video I ever made $1 off of, all on my own, and talk about how I shot it and the gear I shot it with. Now, this was shot about 3.5 years ago when I really started first getting into like doing film as an actual career path instead of just doing it on the side or doing it recreationally. So I'm going to play these back. I don't know if I'm going to do it with sound or not because I don't want to get a copyright strike because there is some copyrighted music used in these ads. So we'll see about that, but I was doing a advertisement for a company called Roam that was making earbuds, IEMs. So this is one of the ads. Showed their intro logo here, and Atari. Atari is one of the partnering companies that helped make these. This was at my mom's house in my living room. This is my buddy Drew, who does music, by the way. Atari wanted to advertise that they had games in here. So the idea was the headphones bring the games to life because they're so realistic. So he plugs into Asteroids, and suddenly he's in a spaceship in this video game, and he swipes over and the console comes to life, and you can see right here there's asteroids and stuff flying across the screen, and he's having a great time. And then he gets a phone call, he answers it, and suddenly he's back in the real world. His buddies are like, "Yo, what's up, dude, where you at?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm on my way." Something like that. And there's the artist that was featured for these songs. And then we had game on, and then it cuts to logo on beat with the song. So let's go back and run through this real quick. Really simple shot, friend in a house. I have this lamp off on the side, but obviously there's more lighting in the room. I just had a softbox pointed up at the ceiling to give it some more ambient light, super diffused. So you can see there's more orange light on one side and a little more white light on the other, because just this orange light you can see here in his skin, just that orange light would not look good by itself, so at least there's some white light over here for contrast. I tried blue, but blue looked a little bit too unrealistic in this situation. So this shot right here is just shot in normal light, and I took this shot of his face in completely normal lighting, and he just stands there. That's it. That's all he does. Nothing actually changes. I pulled it in After Effects, I put a mask over it, and just put a filter on that just fades in, and all it does is decreases the exposure and adds some blue. That literally just fades in over the picture he's in. And then this is just a straight hard cut to this scene that he's in right now. He's looking around like, where am I? What's going on? So this right here, I need to pull up the image off my computer because I want to look at it myself. Okay, I have the picture pulled up on my computer. So, let's blur out that camera right there. I don't want you guys to know what that is just yet. This looks really crazy and complicated. It's not. This whole video, I probably spent like maybe $100 on. So this is a rented space. This is a rented light right here. There is honestly not much in here. This is a warehouse, so this is a lot of the gear sitting in the room is somebody else's, but we just took some saw tables that were made for, sawing wood, put them up at an angle, clamped a piece of plywood on top with some PVC pipe, and used a rig made out of skateboard wheels and a fishing reel, which you would crank, and it would just pull the camera back towards me. So this is an entirely homemade slider. The tripod was strapped onto it, and the camera sitting on top. There's two soft boxes that I got on Amazon. Those were like $40 lights. And the actual rig here is just a silver bed sheet from Walmart that is stretched over a bunch of cardboard boxes and taped on around the bottom with gaff tape. There's a chair in there I got from Goodwill that I still use to this day all the time. Great little chair. Like a few dollars, like $3-4. And then we just used a steamer to try and get most of the wrinkles out. And then those things in the background, those little white spots with the black dots on them are just literally white paper with Sharpie on them, and I'm using those as motion tracking points. So the whole place was actually lit up just like you see it in this picture. The warehouse lights were on and everything. I got the shots that I needed to get, and I used those motion track points to go in around him and literally just add in all of this black. So none of this is actually black behind him other than a little bit of sheet. This is a motion tracked in. I used the motion tracking points to just track in a black layer, and I just rotoscoped around him for this entire shot. But I also used those track points to track in these effects in the foreground. So you see these little bits around him, like the console and all that. That's all motion tracked in, also using those same track points. And I could track onto like him or the edges of the chair, but it was just easier to have real track points. So these elements are really just things I got from a free After Effects pack online. I just went online and looked up After Effects, like, UI, spaceship, future, stuff like that, or After Effects HUD resources, and just pulled in a bunch of still images, overlaid them over each other, and just keyframed them to spin in circles, and then composed that together into a composition and just motion tracked it onto the front. And then that right there is some footage I pulled off YouTube of asteroids, just overlaid that in. And then all of these little explosions and whatnot is just me adding some camera shake, which is literally just putting a null object in an After Effects with a slider effect on it, locking the slider, putting the parameter wiggle 10, pick whipping it to the slider control. And then anytime you drag the slider control up and down, it increases and decreases the camera shake. So I would just make it spike up for like half a second. I just said all that off the top of my head. Probably makes no sense, so I'm gonna have to go back later in and actually show you guys what that looks like. But that was kind of hard to remember. And I did the same thing with flashes of red light, but it's just a lot easier. I just keyframed in and out the opacity of a red adjustment layer and some exposure on his face. And this is just keyframing up and down an icon of a phone. So it's just becoming transparent, and that's pretty much it for him to answer his phone. And then we jump cut back to him in the house with that lighting. And that was the first one. So let's go and look at the other one too. The other one's not nearly as impressive, but it still was really cool. I'm not gonna play this entire one. I'm just gonna skip through it. That's my town square where I live. A shot of a guy coming outside. He's doing a narration right now, talking about, well, there you go. Sometimes I listen to music and it takes me back to another time in my life. The end of something old, the beginning of something new. Got a bunch of people to try these headphones. Got my friend Drew in there again. These shots were decent. This is literally just the headphones sitting on top of a softbox that I had facing straight up and shooting it with my camera. I just set the focus manually and then slide the camera back to get a lot of these shots. Specifically like that one right there is just me moving the camera. This is literally just me moving the camera backwards. And same with that one. Just moving the camera forwards. And that was really straightforward. There wasn't much to that. The only really cool shots I think in that were these. And this whole video was actually shot at 720p. And this is pretty much done just by me spinning the camera in and trying to hold it in place and using warp stabilizer to try and make the movement smoother. And it ended up artifacting really weird and doing this fast movement. And I just decided to go with it for the final shot because it looked really cool. But that was like the first real paid commercial I ever did. It wasn't great, but it turned out decent. And that entire video was shot with $40, actually both of these videos was shot with $40 worth of softbox lights, an extension cord, some PVC pipe, skateboard wheels, and a Canon T2i that didn't even have a mirror in it. And it was all on a kit lens, an 18-55, where the autofocus was broken too. So I had this little camera with one battery, no autofocus at all whatsoever, and the shutter, it was broken, it wouldn't even open, so I had to actually take the entire shutter and pull it out with pliers, so it couldn't even take photos. But that was the camera I started with, and I got super ripped off when I got it on Craigslist because someone traded me a Surface and that camera for a MacBook Air I had at the time, and I thought, oh, this is so cool, I'll start using the camera. And I found out then that it didn't actually work properly, and I could never hear from the guy again. So I got the camera working by ripping its guts out and started using it for making videos, and I edited that on the Microsoft Surface, which was not a fast computer, especially for After Effects. But between those two videos, I ended up making enough money that I bought my next camera, which was the Canon 70D, and I actually had access to a STM lens then. I got the 24mm STM, and I kept using it with my broken 18-55 with no autofocus, and those two lenses held me over for an entire year after that, through all the gigs I did. And I used those two softboxes, the 70D, I got some more batteries for it and a microphone, and just those two lenses that I had. And for an entire year after that of doing filmmaking for a living, that's all I used before I upgraded. And that was enough to pay my bills. That was enough to get me by. And even by today's standards, that's not a good camera. By then, by those standards, it was not that good of a camera. It was an okay camera, but the best it could shoot was low bitrate 1080p with no stabilization whatsoever, and terrible built-in audio, not a lot of dynamic range, but it had really good face tracking autofocus and the colors were reasonably forgiving. But the real thing that saved me on those shoots was having the patience to set things up well and having the patience to light things and go the extra mile to build, a rig out of PVC rather than just trying to move the camera by hand, and using skateboard wheels and a fishing reel, and building a set out of cardboard and stretching a sheet over it and then using a steamer to try and make sure it didn't have wrinkles in it. It's all the little details details that will save you in the long run and make it so you really don't need to buy a lot more expensive gear. And I mean, better gear does help. I do shoot in 4K now. I do love the camera I have now. It has its faults. I'm going to upgrade eventually, but the thing is that I know that it works. And I've used this camera, which is the Sony a6300, and I've shot with this thing next to Reds before and color match the footage together, and honestly, usually, especially on YouTube, people can't tell the difference. Now, there are huge advantages to a Red over this thing. This thing overheats, I have other problems with it, no built-in stabilization, but the real thing with a lot of these gigs, with video across the board in general, is making the best use you can out of the gear you have. And I know right now, I'm not even making the best use out of this a6300 yet. There's things I can do to improve it. Like, for example, if I wanted to record ProRes 10-bit externally, I still haven't done that much with this camera yet. So there's always room to improve, but the things that'll make the biggest difference are the attention to detail and going the extra mile in your setup. So guys, I hope you really liked that breakdown. If you did, please leave a like down below and a comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want early access to videos like this one, you can check out the Patreon linked in the video description. And as always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until the next one, guys. Peace.